Ratzlaff. We'll be presenting some abridged versions of some of our documents. And we'll figure this out. We'll be presenting some abridged versions of some of our writings, but they're all available in the book. The book is available to you. So we encourage you to take one when you go. Also, on the back of the book, you'll notice there's a little sticker here. These books are our gift to you. If you choose to make a gift to the Parkinson's Foundation, that could help us also. Thank you. Steve Ratzlaff and I have been meeting every week over the past few years to share our writings. We often offer suggestions and ask questions of each other. Sometimes it inspires us to take off on tangents, and sometimes the dialogue finds its way into our writing. And I wrote this to Steve about 2 months ago. Steve, this past week I thought about asking you to consider about writing about the trip you're on, the challenges, successes. Even as oral communication becomes more challenging, your written communication reaches me so clearly and continues to teach. I am so grateful that you fearlessly raise and explore these issues, living through them, learning from them, teaching others about them. For each of us is on a path with unseen twists and turns, dips and rises, with slippery surfaces and sudden falls. Times like that, it doesn't hurt to hold hands. I'm so excited to see where our dialogue will continue to take us. The choreography is, when I face Steve, he's speaking. When I face you, I'm speaking. If only I had the words. When I was a very young boy, I remember my school teacher scolding me for using a word she thought was a bad word. She ended the conversation by saying, I only had so many words to speak in my lifetime, and I should be careful which ones I use. It seemed a bit strange at the time to hear someone tell me that at some point I would have used up my quota of words and would speak no more. I grew up and spent 30 years as a pastor. I preached over 1,000 sermons, taught many classes, and had tens of thousands of conversations and discussions. I never ran out of words. In my retirement, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, PD. As the disease has progressed, I have been slowly losing my ability to speak. My speech is slurred, and sometimes it feels like I have run out of words to express myself. And for an ex-preacher, that is a tragedy. There's nothing more frustrating for me than not being able to speak. I have developed relationships with many people over the years. When we visit now, I spend all my time trying to get them to understand me. People with whom I have shared significant experiences in life are now almost estranged, since I can't verbalize well enough. Yes, we use technology, that helps, but it just isn't spontaneous anymore. My humor can no longer be deciphered and is no longer funny. Thus, I am no longer myself. This is devastating. It makes me cry. There really are no words I can find to express this loss. I am now alone, stuck in a reality that separates me in meaningful ways from those I love the most. I admit that it also makes me angry, upset that my body has betrayed me to the extent that I can no longer be true to who I am. Upset that the God I love and serve could not keep this from happening to me, even though I know God didn't give PD. Upset that my family and friends have to give so much of themselves to care for me. It just doesn't seem right. Others should not have to pay a price for something that happens to me, but in a world that is not fair and just, I guess that's just the way it goes. So I continue to write for myself and others. It is the best way for me to express myself and be understood. For others, it is a way I can share what life is like for someone with PD and the family and friends around me. I pray that God will grant me the courage and stamina to live it with dignity and grace, if I only have the words. And in response, I wrote a couple of short pieces. The source. Give me your words now, the sound of warm flesh on the bleached bones of ideas. Capture me with your phrases, branching from the trunks of inspiration, and let me find the answer lurking in the space between the left-facing curve and the dot underneath. This is what I learned the alphabet for. This is what came from seeing Dick and Jane and Spot on the run. Overheard in 10 million conversations, noted in the lines of 1,000 books, lurking in the language of gesture, tone, the tilt of your head, the wave of your hand as you turn away. And speaking of speaking, mix me a margarita metaphor, salt-rimmed and tangy. Give me something to wake up for, slouching here by the hedge. Tell me a story with magic in it, wands and rabbits and stovepipe hats, something to make my nightmares fit the expectations of the edge. Play me a song to dance to in the light, late in the day as the light fades, finding my steps with dignity and grace as slowly I approach the ledge. Our next piece is abridged, it's all in the book, on changing relationships. One of the most significant transformations that occurs in the lives of those who are subjected to adapting to life with Parkinson's disease is the subtle evolution of close relationships. Previous father-daughter-son relationships soon change to father-caregiver relationships, and husband-wife relationships, which used to include spouse, lover, companion, and friend, quickly evolve into that of caregiver and PD patient, with the other elements of that relationship being overwhelmed by the caregiving duties at hand. My wife, Lynette, and I are 8 months into the caregiving segment of my sojourn at PD. It seems to me that I'm slowly becoming more and more the person who needs to be cared for, less and less the spouse, lover, companion, and friend that I have been for the past 48 years of marriage. I'm evolving into a person who needs 24-hour care with less and less choice in that care. More and more, it seems the only choices left to me are no longer mine to decide. One of the things that I have loved about my relationship with Lynette has been the fact that she is my very best friend. That's how our relationship began, and I've always felt comfortable in being with her, even though we might not say much. A sense of togetherness that came just occupying the same space. When caregiving becomes the major objective in the relationship, as often happens in these later stages of PD, sometimes always being around each other or in the same room suddenly takes on a sense of unease, or a sense that we don't need to be around each other all the time. The caregiver task becomes more of a chore, and when the one being cared for can no longer talk or communicate very well, small talk between friends becomes difficult. But you know what? My family has been very, very good at trying to keep me in the loop, even though we all fail to understand how easy it is to fall into these subtle changes that ultimately disrupt family togetherness. And the next one, this is still yours. I got a veto on that, so I'll talk to you later. If you read the book, you'll understand probably why I'm not reading this one out loud. Number 4, marginalization. During my 30 years as a pastor and hospice chaplain, and now as an older man suffering from PD, I have become aware of a process called marginalization. It refers to the slow but seemingly inevitable change in the attitude of long-term caregivers and family members who slowly push their sick and disabled loved one to a peripheral place in their lives. Where once the beloved member of the family was an active, vocal, and physical presence in the family, whose opinions were valued and sought after, they slowly are excluded from the decision-making process and are relegated to the periphery of their family members' lives, where the loved one becomes a detached figure, just another of the tasks that need to be cared for each day. A caregiver's life is not an easy one by any means, nor is it easy for the family of disabled loved one. And the one being cared for has their own struggles in a changing landscape. However, it is imperative that all involved be aware of what is happening and try to keep their loved ones' total needs in mind. That includes the marginalization that so subtly pushes that loved one out of their valued place in the family. Just because they aren't able to participate as easily in the activities around them, they still have a lot to offer and deserve to still contribute to the family's life and well-being. I do have a response. We talked about this. Steve said, "You're not getting enough time." I said, "Poems are short because they're condensed," right? So he wanted to make sure I got her. Relegated. I stand outside the door, overhearing the conversation. Creep down the hall at night to find out what will happen. Plans are being made. Decisions without me. I'm too young, too old to be a cleaner. The margins are no place to be. I want to sit in the center of the page, have a leading role in the drama, be still relevant. I do not like being relegated. This is called the G-tube. You'll learn all about it. One of the realities that many Parkinson's patients ultimately have to wrestle with is whether and when to install a feeding tube, a G-tube. And sometimes, most folks with PD have trouble swallowing. As swallowing difficulties progress, and even after pureed food becomes problematic, that decision has to be made. And if you think about it seriously, it's a life and death decision. If a person decides not to have a G-tube, it is only a matter of time before they will starve to death. That's the reason most people have them installed. Others, however, who are aware they will only prolong the agonizing existence they are now living, opt not to install a G-tube and prepare to die. In my particular journey with Parkinson's, I have just made that decision. This was written a couple of weeks ago. My swallowing deteriorated to the point where all my food had to be pureed. 18 months ago, I weighed 235 pounds. Now I'm down to 140. So I am incapable of eating enough calories to maintain a healthy weight. I thought about not getting a G-tube because I'm not sure that my quality of life can be maintained. I realized that if I got a G-tube and a cure or major breakthrough in Parkinson's research was found, that I could possibly live much longer with a good quality of life. I would want to be alive for that. Plus, I would have more time with my family, more time to write, more time to experience joy. In many ways, that would have made this decision a no-brainer. But we all know that a cure for PD is not likely soon. And given the kind of year I've just had, loss of balance, seriously compromised speech and swallowing, it would appear that living a life of dignity will be difficult to do. My quality of life will likely continue to deteriorate as well. So I seriously considered whether I wanted to do the G-tube when the time came. However, I still have much to live for. I have a family that loves me and cares for me, and a wife of 48 years standing beside me. I have 3 grandsons who are entering important parts of their lives, and I want to be part of. And I have relationships that are valuable to me that I'm not ready to see end. I have friends who want to visit me. I have an annual baseball trip with my siblings, which I believe is happening on Thursday in Arizona this year. And a gathering in California in February 2022. Plus, I still have a lot of writing I would like to do. So despite the daily struggle of dealing with a body that doesn't often do what I ask it to do, I have the G-tube installed. I'll explain later. Unwelcome change. When the choice means pain and the pain won't end, when the end is inevitable, and even in the face of it, I choose life. Because I'm still in love with it, with my partner, and pets, children, and friends. The sun rising and setting, the full moon chatting with Venus. Even though taste is gone and smell missing, I remember. And I see you attending beyond endurance, beyond fatigue, and the secondary trauma of caring you endured. When dying comes, it will be a blessing. But for now, I choose life. Yifkor b'chayim. And a major part of that life is the spiritual part. And this is Steve's thoughts. I have been a religious, spiritual person all my life. I was born in a small Mennonite town in Nebraska, where God and Jesus were a part of my life since birth. It was in this atmosphere that I accepted the call to become a pastor and have spent my whole life serving the God of my faith. There was a year in college when I reassessed my faith, but stayed committed to the course I was called to. I went on to seminary and spent about 15 years as a youth worker before I became a pastor at Seattle Mennonite Church in 1982. Over the next 40 years of my life, I have spent hours trying to relate to the God of the universe. Understanding that this relationship required a daily commitment, I pictured Jesus knocking on my office door and asking me, "Ratzlaff, you coming with me today?" It was a good reminder to me just to be faithful one day at a time. There were days when God seemed close, and days when God didn't seem to be anywhere at all. That doesn't seem too unusual in the lives of some of God's great servants. Mother Teresa, who worked with the poor in India her whole life, often felt that God wasn't close. There were a few powerful moments, though, when I was wrapped in the arms of God. Those times were unitive moments that often carried me for weeks. Since I have seen my PD progress, I've thought a lot more about dying. Death is the final transition in this earthly life. And when you are ill, you think about it more often. So I often spend time in my backyard in meditation and contemplation with God. I have believed in life after death all my life and still do. I just wonder what it is like now that I'm getting closer to it. I find myself thinking more about ghosts and angels, spiritual beings that seem to affirm a future spiritual existence, especially as my body loses more and more of its ability to do what I want it to do. The time spent in meditation helps keep me aware of God's place in my life, and that is helpful at this stage in life. So an active spiritual life is very important to me. It helps me be true to who I am and my beliefs, which in turn gives me the strength, courage, and stamina to live these last days with grace and dignity. Steve and I travel different paths. We travel together. In the spirit of the thing. God, spirituality, religion, values, the possible Venn diagrams are limitless. As for me, my anger about the misuse of religion taints the other topics. I struggle to separate them, to consider what is worth thinking about, what gives life or makes the passage of it bearable, or the loss somehow acceptable. In the end, it's the wonder for me. Both kinds. Wondering what it means, and standing in wonder of it all. Whether or not there's an architect, the creation is beautiful and terrible, awful and full of awe. Fittingly, this is our last piece. It's not our last piece. We continue to write it. We will do this, and next year in Fresno every time. Okay. This is titled "The Dream." I had a dream last night. I dreamed and died and went to heaven. It was a quick transition. No bands, no celestial music, but Brewer and Shipley were singing "One Toke Over the Line, Sweet Jesus." No, they aren't dead. God borrowed them just to play for me. Mom and Dad were there, and a few others who played a pretty important role in my life. Ed Mattingly from my Wesleyan years, and John Geddert, my former pastor. Oh yes, and my brother Keith was there too, to give me a copy of his book, February Sunrise, for Mom. No, Keith wasn't dead. He said he would meet me at the pearly gates to make the exchange. But God was way ahead of us mortals and had already secured the copy from Barnes & Noble Press. No cost, no shipping, just the perks about being God. And had placed it in Mom's box at the library, where she does most of her writing now. Keith went back to Iowa. No cost for plane fare, just a nice airdrop by an angel. God then came over to talk with me. Told me he had a nice little apartment for me off the plaza. He said there were a few people who hung around the plaza that I probably would enjoy talking with. Gandhi, Thomas Merton, MLK, Bobby Kennedy, Hitler. I knew then that heaven was not going to be boring. I had breakfast with Mom and Dad every day before Mom would head to the library or some beautiful spot where she would be inspired to write. Dad spent much of his time at the coffee shop discussing a myriad of issues. Went with him once, and to my surprise, he spent the whole day talking with Jackie Rempel, his earthly adversary. Didn't see that coming. They talked religion most of the time, and since neither was upset with the other about belief or gossip, they got along well, until Jackie mentioned irrigation. Got a little heated, but the next day, they were talking again. One time, I went to Mom and Dad's place, and all of Mom's siblings were there. It was a very pleasant gathering. Uncle Henry was regaling them all with jokes. Uncle Dietrich looked like he was sleeping, but would open his eyes to see if anyone noticed that he wasn't planning to tease somebody. And Wilbur was yodeling quietly in the background. No sign of Elwood, but Mabel was able to move around well with a body free of arthritis. Mom and Alice and Laverna were making Netja and Spivak for lunch. Others popped in from time to time. Vern, Eisen, Charlie, and Davy as well. I have to admit, it was a time filled with pure love. Everybody was happy to be there. All felt at home. One afternoon, while chatting in the local plaza with J.R.R. Tolkien and Dostoevsky and a few others I can't remember, there was a sudden rush of wind and a loud crack. Seconds later, everyone who was present in the plaza was transported to another world, a world with 7 moons and obviously in the midst of a devastating war. Nobody I was with knew what was happening. What is going on?
I encourage you to grab a copy of the book. It does have longer versions of some of these things. And again, the sticker on the back, should you feel moved to contribute to the Parkinson's Foundation. That could make a difference in lots of people's lives. Thank you so much.